Hey everyone, I'm Matt with Ozark Overland Adventures, and you may recognize this guy. It's my good friend Robert. And Robert is in the unique position of owning both a Toyota, actually multiple Toyotas, and a new Jeep Wrangler. And so a couple weeks ago, posted the question on all the different social media things. What are your questions regarding the Jeep versus Toyota debate? Because it's been going on forever. And I think in this overlanding off-road space, I mean, those are the two most common vehicles that you see. I mean, from all of our stuff.
Let me get in my defensive position here. All right, ask away.
I don't think you need to. I don't think it's going to be defensive. I think this.
We should have wore the little shirt that said "Let's be friends" or whatever. The two.
The Be Kind.
Yeah,
the Be Kind shirt. You like my new shirt?
I do. I like it.
All about the taco.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is from Mateo at Tacoma Beast. So just thought I'd rep the taco
Represent,
today.
huh?
Yeah. Because I mean, we say it all the time. There's no perfect vehicle.
Yeah.
There's the right vehicle for your style of off-roading, overlanding, but none of them are perfect. As much as I love the Gladiator, it's not perfect.
I heard him say that.
It's not.
It's not perfect.
It's definitely not perfect. So let's just go through these questions.
All right.
And see. And you're in the unique perspective of owning both, and you're still a Toyota guy at heart, even though you own a Jeep.
I don't know if they need the history, but yeah, my dad had a Toyota when I was a little kid, and he got a third gen 4Runner, 1992. And I love that truck. That was our first four-wheel drive vehicle that our family's ever owned. And
I didn't know that.
It was awesome. It was awesome. And then and I wrecked it, destroyed it. It wasn't my fault, but it was a bad accident, and he's never forgiven me, I think, from that. But anyway, when I got in college, I had a sports car, a red sports car, and I took it off road. I went back caving in it, and so I really needed a truck. And so when I got out of college, I got that Tacoma, and so my '95 Tacoma was my first truck I've ever owned.
And you bought it brand new.
Bought it brand new,
and you still own it today.
I still have it. And so that was but I left it stock for 25 years. Mm-hmm. Didn't do anything to it. And then it got its antique tag on it. And then we, in the meantime, I got another Tacoma, a 2016. And because I knew my son was coming up, and I thought, well, I'll get this Tacoma. And when he gets old enough to drive, I can kind of give it to him. And so he has it now. So that's Matthew's Tacoma. And we lifted it. He didn't want a Tacoma either. He wanted a GMC full-size truck. And like all the farmers around in the Delta, and I'm like, no, Matthew, you need something that can go in the woods because you're going to go to University of Arkansas. You're going to want to get on the trails. And I said, but we'll lift it and we'll put tires on it. And that's what started us in this whole journey, was him not wanting that Tacoma. And so I lifted it and put bigger tires on it to make it cooler. And then once we did that, I got a 4Runner, and then I immediately lifted it. And then we said, hey, now that it's lifted and we got bigger tires, we can do more stuff. And so we started doing that. We went to the rendezvous in the Ozarks. We met you. I think John went to one of your guy classes, and then we joined you on a trail ride. And that's how we got to know you. And we've just kind of grown ever since. So.
Yeah. And so you've got, your son has the Taco.
Yep.
You've got the 4Runner. You also have the first gen Taco.
Yep.
And your wife has a Sequoia.
It's 2012. She's got 300,000 miles on it, and she loves that thing.
Yeah.
She won't get
rid of it.
Nope.
And then your daughter has a 4Runner.
My daughter and my son-in-law, they have a white 4Runner. I got really lucky with that. Frank Likert was selling his 4Runner that was already built.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and it was before the boom happened. Sorry, Frank. So I got a really good deal on it. And so they have it, and it's a really nice 4Runner wheel belt. And then what else? And then my daughter has got a RAV4, Toyota RAV4.
Yeah, I forgot about the RAV4.
Yeah.
And then, but you just came back from the Ozarks. You've been doing an all-weekend hiking trip.
Yep.
And you pulled up in your Jeep.
I did. But the reason
was because you had to pick it up from the shop.
Yeah, because it was in Conway in the shop. So, but all of my vehicles right now were in the shop, every one of them. So Toyota, Jeep, every one of them were in the shop. Literally, I'm not even joking.
I believe you. Well, let's just go through these questions and see what we come up with. So, first one here: what are the strengths and weaknesses of each? Reliability, ride quality, off-road ability, etc. And I think that's a good question to start with, because it kind of lays the foundation for all the rest of them. So you own both, so you go.
So I think reliability for the Toyotas started 25 years ago. I think some of the old Land Cruisers, I mean, you can't beat them for off-road, and they had the solid front axle. I mean, they were very capable machines.
Yeah.
And they were so capable and reliable that people are still buying 97 Land Cruisers and using those as their off-road vehicles. And I think that's kind of where Toyota's reliability came from.
And the Hilux.
And the
Toyota
Hilux, yes.
Hilux,
And my first
Toyota
Tacoma
pickup.
is basically a Hilux. I mean,
Yeah.
the very first gen Tacomas were really, really good. Now, Matthew's third gen Tacoma, we had some transmission issues. We had some things that weren't really quite right. We had to do a lot to them to make it more off-road capable. And so that's where your reliability starts kind of faltering, is when you start modifying these vehicles to go above and beyond what the engineers had designed them for.
Yeah.
And so for reliability, the question is, I think the Toyota is more reliable if you leave it stock.
Stock for
For
stock.
sure. Right.
Yeah, stock for
And-
stock.
And mild
the Toyota
off-road
has edge.
stuff. The Jeeps seem to be easier to modify and build up and work on. Maybe that was designed that way because they knew they would need to. But man, I don't know. The 4Runner, I mean, that's a super great rig too. But I've had issues with the idler pulley. I think 3 times has failed on me, and I've had to have it towed.
Yep.
But now I've got 130,000 miles on my 4Runner. The Jeep, the 2021 Jeep that I got with less than 5,000 miles on it, the idler pulley went out.
Yes.
And the only thing that we had done was the Kentucky trip. Now, I
Right.
did get in that pretty nasty mud hole.
And that's the only thing we can think of is somehow backing out of that mud hole.
It was just
messed it up.
nasty
Yeah.
with leaves and stuff. And so
'Cause Kara's got
less than
20
5.
Yeah, Kara's
she's
got 22,000 on
But Kara,
hers.
she's not going to put hers in a mud hole.
She's not
either.
going in a mud hole though.
So, but that happened, and then just the reason why it was in Conway was me and Mary Catherine were scouting out her backpacking trip and looking for camping spots and where we were going to stage vehicles, and we went through a couple of deep water crossings, and we were coming through Clinton, Arkansas, and it overheated again. And of course, I immediately pulled over and started looking for reasons. I called Paul up and it's like, what's going on? He's like, do you have mud in your radiator? And no, it was all clean. And then I got underneath there, and sure enough, that belt was no tension on that belt again. Same
Same one.
thing.
Yeah,
so I
same
had to
pulley.
have it towed to Conway, and they did a great job, dealership there, and they got me fixed up and out the door. But I used it this weekend coming through. So they both break down. Every one of my vehicles right now has got an issue.
How many CV joints have you gone through?
At least 3, at least 3 that I know of.
Yeah.
And well, I wouldn't know of all of them, but yeah, 3 that I can think of that happened on the trail.
Because I think that's been the most common issue in our trips and then on this channel, because we wheel with a bunch of different vehicles. The CV axles have been the biggest issue because you've had that. Our friend Chris has had that. Our Justin's had that. Taylor's had that.
And that also goes with experience too, because when I first got lockers put in the 4Runner, me and John were testing the rigs out, and I was going on a downhill slope. I got too close to a tree, and I was going to try to back out, and I had my front lockers on, and I put it in a bind, and that's what broke the first CV axle.
Yeah.
And then the next one got broken on, I think, was at Hell's Revenge.
Was that Moab? That's your second one?
And we had run all these trails, and we were tired. And when you get tired, you start making mistakes. And I was trying to go up the tip over challenge, and you were even telling me on the radio you need to go more drivers. And I went passenger, and I turned my tire into the rock at an angle and tried to climb up it, and that's what popped.
Or more driver.
So now I'm more conscious of that, but I also have CBR axles now.
Yeah, which should be stronger.
No, RCB. I'm sorry, RCB axles, and those are a lot stronger. So they should not break now.
Yeah. Well, what about? I mean, you've been on long trips with your Jeep. You've been on multiple long trips in your 4Runner. Which one's more comfortable to you?
4Runner for sure. The 4Runner is more comfortable. It's got the independent front suspension, so bumps, and even going through off-road trails, if you're moving any kind of speed, I can go faster in the 4Runner than the Jeep.
Yeah, I mean, IFS is
Comfortable.
always going to be more comfortable than a solid axle rig.
And it's pretty capable too. I mean, my 4Runner has done at least 28 Jeep Badge of Honor trails.
Yeah.
Even more than you have in your Gladiator. I'm sure you'll catch me eventually, but it's been everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
followed
an impressive
John.
rig.
It's followed John, but if you walk around my 4Runner, it is all beat up because it's got a wider body, a bigger body, and the wheel stance is actually narrower than the Jeeps are. And so when John misses a tree, I kiss it, and
Or
so
when John rubs a tree, it's his tires rubbing.
right.
Whereas you, it's your fenders rubbing.
Yeah, that's right. And the rock rails with the kickouts help a little bit, but it's just a bigger, bulkier vehicle going through the trails.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely an advantage of the Jeeps, I think, over the 4Runner.
Knowing if you've got a trip coming up, like we have it coming up to Moab next month, if you've got a trip coming up where it is just a bunch of hardcore off-roading, which one do you pick?
The Jeep, for sure. Yeah. I don't know if that's a question or not.
It is. Yeah, it's kind of the second part. Yeah, just off-road ability.
The way I've described it in the past is Toyota is a highway machine that can go off-road. The Jeep is an off-road vehicle that can go on the highway. And so they're built from the ground up with that kind of mentality. At least the modern Toyotas. Now some of the older ones, some Land Cruisers and stuff, they were built. I mean, they were
awesome.
just you can't
I
beat
wish
the old Land
Toyota
Cruisers.
would bring that back.
Oh man, my word! I would love to have an old '97 Land Cruiser and build it up, but I know I'd tear it up and that would be a sin. But sure enough, the way where the wheels are located, the center of gravity is where the weight is. John, when he got his JL, it had 33-inch tires on it from factory. He hadn't done anything to it. He met me with my 4Runner built up on 33s, and I had rear lockers at the time. And I got stuck in some ruts that he didn't get stuck in. And he hadn't done anything to his Jeep yet. So from right off the bat, I knew that his was more capable. And there were several times when I was following him, he would get over something, I'd have to winch up it. I mean, so I would try to build the 4Runner up again and put bigger tires on it. And so I went up to 35s when all y'all went up 35s. And I put a front locker in trying to keep up. But there's so much weight on the rear end of the 4Runner that you lose traction on the front end. And my wheelbase is actually shorter, which is supposed to be an advantage in some situations, but everything that we do, it seems like a little bit longer wheelbase is better.
Yeah.
And so if you go back and look at that video where I was trying to climb out of Mickey's hot tub, you can see I can't get any traction on the front end to pull me over because it's all that weight's on the back.
Right.
So for sure, there's but I can tow more. I can haul more stuff. I'm more comfortable in there. I got more cubby hose for all my stuff. So for a pure overlanding rig, I'm going to take the 4Runner every day, twice on Sunday. But if we're going to go extreme trails or we're going to do rock crawling, then I'm going to take the Jeep.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's see. Someone asked for Overland, which is the way to go. I think you just answered that. You would pick the 4Runner all day, every day for just pure overlanding. Someone says, I've never seen a Toyota in the military. Well, not in the U.S. military, but overseas, they're all Toyotas. Yeah. So,
for sure.
Let's see. Someone says Dakar is one of the hardest off-road races to win in the world. Why does anyone enter a Jeep in the Dakar? Actually, they have. There's been Grand Cherokees in the Dakar Rally. There's been Wranglers in the Dakar Rally. Just this most recent Dakar Rally, there was the brand new Wagoneer in the Dakar Rally. So, yeah, Jeeps are definitely in the Dakar. Would you ever solid axle swap a Toyota? And what's the advantage of IFS? Now, full disclosure, before Robert was talking about getting his Jeep, I begged him to solid axle swap his 4Runner.
4Runner or the Taco?
The 4Runner. Yeah, I begged him to solid axle swap the 4Runner because I thought that would be a cooler build than to add another Wrangler to our mix. So
you're just thinking about your channel. You're not thinking about me.
I think a solid axle swap 4Runner is awesome.
Yeah, I've thought about it, and I'll never say never. But everybody knows that Brian at Mud Connections does all my stuff, and I really value his opinion. And he was telling me that when you put a solid axle on a vehicle that was designed with independent front suspension, you run into a lot of trouble.
Oh,
you have to raise it up so much.
Yeah, I'm sure.
To clear all that. And so now right now I've got a 3-inch lift. I'd have to go like to a 6-inch lift, 6.5-inch lift, and so then now you're more top heavy.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would do that. Plus it's a lot of money, and you would lose all the advantages I've been talking about the 4Runner the ride quality, the
Comfortable.
reliability, all that stuff, you would lose, and
Yeah.
it would become like a trailer princess. So I don't think I will ever do that to the 4Runner. My little Taco, maybe. I mean, maybe, but I really love that thing too. I mean,
That thing is so sweet.
it's fun. It's my favorite rig to ride. I mean, it's more of a trail beast than the other ones are, but it's lighter. I mean, it doesn't have anything.
Yeah.
weighing
I
it
love
down.
that rig.
Yeah,
I absolutely
it's
love that rig.
fun. It's not quite as comfortable as a 4Runner, but it's not too far off.
Yeah. Well, I think the advantages of a solid axle are strength and articulation, because you can keep all 4 tires on the ground a lot better than you can with an IFS rig. IFS rig is going to be more comfortable because as it's going over rocks and road features and stuff, each wheel is moving independently. Whereas with a solid axle, this one goes up, well, this one has to come down. That's just how they work. But they don't have near the articulation.
And I tried to counterbalance that by removing my sway bars. Before
Yes,
that
you
last
did.
trip to Moab with the 4Runner, I took off my front and rear sway bar. I shouldn't have taken off the rear sway bar because I think that got me in trouble on Hell's Gate.
Yeah, that made you more tippy.
And a bad line. I had a poor spotter on that one.
You did.
I'm not
You
sure
had
who
a
was doing
spotter
that.
that was used to spotting Jeeps.
Yeah,
so-
and that is something that happens a lot to me because y'all are like, take this line, and I'm like, I'm going over it, and I'm like, wait, I'm in a Toyota. I need to take this line,
Yeah.
which is a little bit easier.
That's true.
But I did take the sway bars off for a long time, and then once I got the Jeep, I actually put the sway bars back on the 4Runner because when people would borrow it, it's not as tippy, and I was fine driving it that way.
Yeah.
But Ben took it down to Mobile and
We took it to Colorado.
Took it to Colorado, and it was really hard for him to get used to. So I think that's another advantage the Jeep has over the 4Runner is that you can disconnect your sway bars and then you can reconnect them so you're more
Super easy.
stable
Yeah.
for the highway speeds. But
Yeah. Someone asked, is it true a Jeep will get you there, but a Toyota will get you home?
I've been towed 3 times that I can remember in my 4Runner. I've been towed twice in the Jeep. So, but the 4Runner has 130,000 miles on it. The Jeep has 30. So I don't know how that ratio is going to pan out, but it just all depends. I think no, I don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah, I don't either. Okay, I think you've already answered this. What's your favorite and why? I think
Yeah.
you've answered that. The 4Runner, or actually the Tacoma.
Actually, the Tacoma's my
Tacoma,
favorite.
yeah.
But it was my first truck. There's more sentimental value to it. It's super capable too. But it doesn't have the storage either.
No,
If I put a
but
camper shell on it or something, it might be.
It doesn't even have a back
bit
seat
better.
hardly.
No back seat.
Yeah. Okay, this is a good question. What's more costly to maintain for someone who regularly goes overlanding, off-roading?
The 4Runner has been more costly for me. But if somebody's doing this, I'll use my daughter and son-in-law's rig as an example. They haven't had any maintenance on theirs hardly. I mean, none. But they only go off-road a couple times a year. They're not doing anything crazy. Even the water crossings this weekend, I'm like, Mary Catherine, I don't want to take your vehicle through there. We're going to take the Jeep through. My 4Runner I would have. But they asked me, one of the guys on this trip asked me, because he was looking at John's rig and thought it was pretty cool, and Mary Catherine's, what does it take to build them up? I think it takes more money to build a 4Runner up to be comparable to the Jeep. Now, granted, what we've done to the Jeeps is as much or more than I've done to the 4Runner, almost. But we're on 37s, 38s versus 35s.
Right.
And you have to do a lot of work to get
lot of
35s
work to do
comfortably
35s.
on. And we know some people who put some 37, 38s, but even that's even more work.
Yeah.
But to maintain them, I think it's more expensive for the 4Runner for me. But I use the 4Runner more often too, so we'll see what's like in the long run. Right now, all the stuff, the Jeep has been under warranty, so
Yeah.
I mean that's been kind of nice.
True. I think for any vehicle, the key is how well you take care of it.
Yeah.
Oil changes, greasing all your bushings and U-joints and all that sort of thing. Just your general maintenance stuff is critical. With all the water crossings that we do, checking your differentials when you get home, for fluid in there, just all that type of stuff is critical. And between the two, that's pretty much a wash. As far as that
Right.
type of maintenance.
And I'll use John as an example in this one too, because my wife gets upset when my vehicles break down, and she's like, "Why is yours breaking down and John's is not breaking down?" Because John's been through all these things with this Jeep, but John's way better on maintenance than I am, way better. And if he hears anything that's off or wrong, we got a guy down the street who's a great mechanic, and he's like, his name is Junior Lyles, awesome dude. But he's a Toyota tech, but he doesn't like us doing all these mods to the vehicles either. He wants us to leave them stock, but he's real good at figuring out stuff. And so he's had Junior change out his idler pulleys, tensioner pulleys. So he's actually changed those out before. That's why his has never gone out. Because as soon as he hears anything with it, he changes it out. And so I have to do the same thing.
Preventive maintenance.
Right. And so the 4Runner and the Jeep, all the water crossings that we do is going to wear out that grease in those seals. It's just, even though they're still bearing, it's still going to wear it out. So you have to pay attention to noises. And I was telling John on this trip too, I said, I think the Jeep was trying to warn me, because I noticed something a little different in the noise with everything, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was a Jeep thing, or since I haven't had a Jeep long enough. And now I think it was trying to let me know that the bearing was going out. So yeah, I just got to pay more attention, and I have to do better maintenance for sure. But if you're not good at maintenance, you're probably going to have better luck with the Toyota than the Jeep.
Probably.
Yeah, especially if you don't do a lot of crazy stuff.
If you don't do the preventive maintenance.
Yep.
Yeah. So comparing the Jeep Wrangler / Gladiator to a 4Runner Land Cruiser, is the slight additional capability off-road, I'm going to argue with that slight point there, with a solid front axle, worth the sacrifice in comfort luxury that Toyota offers?
I was very comfortable in my 4Runner all the way up until the last Moab trip. And because I could keep up with the Jeeps, I did every trail y'all did. Even if I had to winch, I had the winch, so I could do those trails.
Right.
And so I was very fine with that. And I love the comfort of it, and I even like the back and forth, the Jeeps versus the Toyotas, and I wanted to show that I could do what you guys could do. Even if it took me a little bit more effort, I could get it done.
And you've done that well.
And I did. But when we got to Moab, and I had struggled on Hell's Gate, struggled on Mickey's Hot Tub, and those were kind of precursors to doing the two major trails that we wanted to do, Pritchett and Cliffhanger.
Yeah, and you didn't do Escalator at all.
I didn't even try Escalator.
Yeah,
I was already upset at that point. Well, and I knew that I would get damaged. I mean, because y'all, I see Jeeps getting damaged all the time, so I would definitely get damaged with the 4Runner. So I had to sit at home, and I also broke a CV axle on that trip too. So Rory with Trailmater, he actually fixed my CV axle on that one. That was kind of neat. So I had to ride shotgun on Cliffhanger, and I hated it. I hated riding shotgun. I didn't mind helping y'all get through your trail, but I felt like...
But you weren't driving, and that was
driving.
a problem.
I was missing out. Same thing that happened when John's first Overland trip. He rode passenger with me. He's, I'll just be your navigator. We went through some awesome water crossings, and he's like, I got to get something. I got to drive my own rig. And so I started thinking, maybe one day I'll have a Jeep. And then you let me take your Gladiator up Hell's Gate. And that was, it was so stress-free. I mean,
you came up and
there's
said
a
that
lot
was
of tension with the 4Runner because you're going to tip over. People talk about my wheels rising all the time, and that's nerve-wracking. I'm comfortable with it now. I kind of know what that point is.
Yeah. My favorite part of our Colorado trip was on Holy Cross, you spotting Ben up in the 4Runner, and the guys who were used to Jeeps who had never met us before were like, whoa, 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 whoa. And you're like, no, come on.
Punch through it.
And
even Jeep was, even Ben was nervous in the Jeep because, and Ben's crazy in his Jeep, but in the 4Runner he was nervous.
Oh, yeah.
It feels different. But anyway, so I didn't get to do Cliffhanger, didn't get to do Pritchett, and I thought, I want to do those trails. I don't want to have to sit out on anything. And so if every rig's got its limitations, and I think if you're going to keep going bigger tires, more extreme trails, you're probably going to need a Jeep in the long run, or build a buggy. You can build a rock buggy, but you're going to be trailing it everywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Generally speaking, would you say that doing significant modifications yourself on the Toyota is easier or more difficult than doing the same modifications on the Jeep? We kind of touched on that. But I have installed a lift on a lot of Jeeps, and I've installed a lift on a friend's 4Runner. And the Jeep is so much easier to work on.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, it's, even though, we're 2023, solid axle is just very old school. And it's very simple, geometry and stuff with the control arms and the track bar and stuff. It's a lot easier to lift a Jeep than it is a 4Runner, just from a mechanical standpoint, because once you start really putting a taller lift on a 4Runner, you're really changing that geometry of that IFS system, and there's a lot of little quirks that go into that.
If you do it right, for sure. Now, there's a lot of people who just want the look of a lift, and they're not really going to do anything extreme off roads, and so they'll do spacer lifts and they'll get longer shocks, and that's not too difficult. And we did that at first because we didn't know, and then we started breaking shocks, and so we got with Mud Connections, and Brian kind of walked us through where we should be, and that was a lot more complicated. And I'm the opposite of Matt. I'm going to pay a professional to do it because I'm not mechanically inclined and didn't grow up that way, and so I'm very comfortable having somebody who knows what they're doing do it. And I do agree with you where you should try to do all your own maintenance, and so you can understand and you can fix things when they break. And I feel pretty confident that I could change the CV axle now. I mean, that's kind of a given. But even on that trip, we didn't have the tools, we weren't prepared for that.
Right.
And so I was very thankful for Rory to step in on his day off to go do that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was awesome. But anyway, but yeah, I don't know. I think Jeeps are easy to work on. They're easier to modify than Toyotas. Toyota they do a really good job from factory of getting all their stuff in order, and when you start messing with all that, you run the risk of failure. So if you do a lift, you need to do it right for sure.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work to it. So.
And to lift, same lift, quality lifts. Was your Jeep lift, because you've got a nice lift on your Jeep, was your lift on your Jeep more or less expensive than the lift you have on your 4Runner? Do you remember? I know it's been a long time since you've been on
the lift part itself was actually more expensive on the Jeep because I just went higher quality.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so with the Jeep, my passion is not with the Jeep at all. My passion is with the 4Runner and Toyota, with all the Toyotas that I have. The Jeep is a tool, and I like the Jeep. Don't get me wrong, and it's a super capable. But I was like, I'm going to get a Jeep, and so I went to John, to Ben, to you, and I was like, what would y'all do if you had to start over right now? And so John, he sent me a wonderful spreadsheet. Yeah, a spreadsheet that said all the things. I'm like, $25,000. What? What if we cut this back and cut that back and cut that back? So we had to go back a little bit, but it was a pretty expensive lift altogether. It wasn't 25, Carrie. Over my wife.
Just in case you watch this.
But it was expensive. It was more expensive than the 4Runner. But see, with the 4Runner, I added a supercharger. That's like $7,000 to get more horsepower because the 4Runner's heavier from the beginning, and so it kind of turned that.
What's the factory horsepower numbers on the 4Runner? Do you remember?
260, I think.
260. Okay. So a little bit less.
270 maybe.
A little bit less than the Wrangler. The Wrangler's 285. There's at 305 now.
And then the supercharger adds 30% to it. So
yeah.
I'll have to do the math later, but you get 30% more horsepower and torque from factory, and so that helped a lot. It turned the V6 into feeling more like a V8.
Yeah.
And I was super excited too when I got it done because I was heavy on the gas pedal, and I went and challenged my wife and her Sequoia for a race, and she took off a little bit with that V8 in her. So it's not really a V8, but it feels more like a V8. But that wasn't expensive, and then I had to upgrade the gears. So I went to 488s. Yeah. And then you have to, when you go up to 33s, you have to do a little bit of modifications to the frame. You have to do your body mount chops, and you have to
just for 33s.
Just for 33s. And then to go to 35s, you really need that high clearance bumper. So I had to go to the high clearance bumpers for those to get 35s on there. And so there's a lot of modifications that you have to do. Yeah. Whereas with the Jeep, I bought it stock.
37s and 38s with just a lift.
Well, and there's some people who run 37s without a lift, and they said you can, but I didn't want to rub at all. But I bought that Extreme Recon Edition with 35s, and that was really super capable out of the box, and didn't have to do anything to it. But I knew I wanted to run Pritchett one day and Cliffhanger, so I wanted to go at least 37. So I knew that but with that one, it has the 456 gears, so I don't have to regear yet.
Nope. Yeah,
unless I go 40s.
Yeah, Kara's running 38s with the same 456 gears.
So
it
Yep.
Still hits 8th gear on the highway and it pulls
So
great.
less expensive to modify the Jeep, but my lift itself was more expensive.
Was more expensive.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. Another question about comfort. Compare the off-road comfort. Now, we've established the 4Runner is more comfortable than the Wrangler. Do you find the Wrangler uncomfortable?
No, and so I think people coming from the OTJs and I forget all the numbers now.
CJs before that.
CJs,
Yeah.
TJs,
TJs, yeah, YJs,
JKs,
TJs, yeah.
all those things. You know, they got more comfortable.
They have.
Every generation is more comfortable.
Yes.
And the JKs weren't bad. They weren't bad, but they're more of a you knew you were in an off-road rig.
Yes.
And so when John got the JL, I think he was the first one to get a JL in our group.
He was.
And it was super comfortable. And I was like, this isn't bad. I don't know why everybody's complaining about Jeeps for. This is pretty comfortable. And now my wife thinks my 4Runner is uncomfortable because she's coming from a Sequoia.
Gotcha.
You know, so
Yeah.
it all depends on your perspective.
Yeah.
And so you coming from a JK to a JT and JL.
I bought the Gladiator because it was so comfortable.
So you're like, this is great. You know, so it's all about your perspective on things.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, so I think the 4Runner is definitely more comfortable, but it's not as comfortable as a Land Cruiser or a Sequoia.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. Okay, good question about picking lines. Do you pick lines differently with a solid axle versus IFS?
So I think I'm a better driver than all these Jeep guys. Because yes, you have to pick better, different lines with the 4Runner. You have to think differently with the independent front suspension. And I don't think I'm a better driver than y'all are, but you do have to have more skills. And when I get in the Jeep, I don't think about it. I don't. It doesn't bother me. I just go. And I've gotten in trouble a couple times with Jeep too. I mean, I almost flipped over one time on was that Holy Cross?
On Holy Cross, yeah.
Yeah. And so you can get in trouble with Jeep too. Don't get me wrong. But it's just a lot easier to negotiate obstacles in the Jeep than the 4Runner.
Now, your 4Runner, you've still got the factory rear locker, and you've added a front locker to it. Before you did that, it's a question here about how the Jeep and IFS, with lockers versus Toyota's A-Track and crawl control. Talk about that. Did you have much experience with using A-Track and crawl control on your 4Runner before throwing lockers in the front?
So the 4Runner came with the crawl control, and that was one of the selling features too, because I thought it was the magic button. You know, you get that, and it doesn't solve all problems, but it does help a lot. And our friend Nick Halstead, he's got a 4Runner that's very similar to mine, and he doesn't have a front locker, but he uses the rock setting, and it acts like an electronic locker in the front, and so he gets to do a lot of stuff. I thought the front locker would solve a lot of problems too, and I've gotten used to it, so now I just lock it up. So I don't really mess with all the electronics that much anymore. I did use the downhill hill descent, but Toyota calls it crawl control, on that last one trip that we just did.
Okay.
Down Bendorf.
Yeah, down Bendorf.
Yeah, and I think somebody even asked, why weren't we using it? I was like, I actually did use it, but I didn't like it because I didn't feel like I was in control.
Yeah.
I think when you're starting off, that gives you a lot of confidence, those features, but the more off-road experience you get, you kind of want to be the one controlling things.
Yeah, because it's doing things that you can do yourself. It's just doing it for you.
Right.
You may or may not have the knowledge of how to do it.
So I don't use that stuff much anymore.
Yeah.
But I have lockers now.
Yeah.
So if it gets tough, I just lock it up.
Using Ben as an example, because Ben fairly recently got new axles with lockers. And so before he went up to the 38s, when he had 35s, he had the Sahara. James did too before he got new axles and lockers. And it was always impressive. You know, Jeep has their version of A-Track. It's called brake lock differential, and they do the same thing. And they were able to.
That's a limited slip.
It's limited slip, but it's where the computer applies the brakes to the tire that's slipping to send the power to the tire with traction. So it with that fakes like there's a locker on it. But both systems work very well.
But you have to slip a little bit.
Yeah, you got to get used to how to drive it and actually let the tire spin to let that
And a
kick
lot of
in.
times when people start spinning the tires, then they let off because they think they're not getting traction, and you're just like, keep in it, and then it'll kick in and go.
Insurance coverage. It's a question about insurance coverage. Do you find is Jeep or Toyota any more or less expensive to insure?
Not really. It's all about the value of the vehicle, and a lot of our accessories. As long as you have receipts for them, they'll cover those. You don't have to have. I haven't experienced needing extra insurance for them.
Yeah, I haven't either.
And even the things that we do, they're kind of what the vehicles are designed to do. So as long as you're not hurting it on purpose to try to collect an insurance check, you're going to be fine.
Yeah. This is a good question here. Just talking about a vehicle on a budget, because we've pretty much all got new current vehicles. So saying someone doesn't have $60,000 to buy a Jeep or buy a 4Runner TRD off-road, what would you suggest for an older vehicle that's maybe more affordable?
Well, my experience is just Toyotas so I would look for an old Tacoma. Problem is that people who have those don't get rid of them.
No,
they won't sell them, so you got to pay for them.
Yeah, they're not. Those aren't cheap. And Land Cruisers, God, an old Land Cruiser would be amazing. But if you find one in good condition, you're going to spend a lot of money.
Oh yeah,
on them.
yeah, for sure. If you're going to spend $25,000 on an old Land Cruiser, and then you have to modify it, to get it a little bit more off-road worthy. But yeah, I don't know.
I think the best. None of us have one, but I've wheeled with them before. I think probably one of the best budget rigs is an old Jeep XJ Cherokee.
Yeah.
What is it? Mid 2000s to mid 90s XJ Cherokee.
Yeah.
They're super cheap. They've got the inline 6, which is almost a bulletproof engine, the 4-liter. They interchangeable parts with a TJ for suspension. Not the most comfortable rig, but as far as building a budget off-roader, I mean, you can't hardly.
Yeah, we had a buddy named Keith who had one, and he built it up, and it's called Sarge.
Okay.
And he had it for a little while, but it had too many leaks. He eventually got rid of it. Now he's in a Gladiator. So yeah, he slowly but surely built up. He went from that to a JK, and now he's got, and then he went to a JL, and then now he's in a Gladiator. So he's just kind of stair-stepped up, but he had that, and he did do all the modifications himself, and it was fairly cheap to do that. So, but it just had too many issues for him to keep working on it.
Yeah. Or if you don't care about looks, an old beater Toyota, that thing's going to run well.
For sure. If you can find a first gen Tacoma that's in good shape, that's the one to go to. But it all depends on what you do with it too. And we do some extremely difficult stuff off road. And we put our vehicles through the ringer. We really do. But if you were going to do something, if you wanted something that was pretty capable off road, if you could find an old 4Runner that you didn't have to do a lot of mods to it, I think that would be a really good vehicle because they are super dependable.
Yeah.
The old 4Runners.
I think that's a great idea.
And the new 4Runners, I haven't seen not the new ones that are coming out, but the 5th gen, what I have. They haven't changed anything for 12 years. So that's a pretty big span of the same vehicle, and they didn't change anything because it was so solidly built. But it's antiquated. I mean, all the electronics are antiquated. It's old school. But if you don't care about that, that's a pretty reliable vehicle for off-road that you don't have to modify too much, and you can put 33s on it without doing too much to it.
Yep.
But yeah, that's probably what I'd look for as an old 4Runner.
Yeah, I think you make I think you make a good point. Yeah, it depends on what you want to do with it.
Yep.
Because before Kara got a Wrangler, she had the 2018 Grand Cherokee. That wasn't super expensive. It was a Trailhawk. It had all leather. We got a good deal on it. And that was incredibly capable off-road. Not near as capable as our rigs now.
Oh, well, she did Hell's Gate in that thing.
I mean, she wheeled the crap out of that thing, and it was incredibly comfortable. Sometimes I miss it.
and John's wife, Cindy,
she's got the Trailhawk still.
She has the same thing, and they'll take that one on a longer trip because it is more comfortable. And if he does want to do a side trail, he can do it. Mm-hmm. She doesn't like him to do it, but he knows he can if he wants to.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good choice as well.
Yeah. Well, I think we went through just about everything. So,
all right.
let us know in the comments if you have any additional questions, and you ask something that I can't answer, I'll make sure Robert is there to answer them. But man, I know you've still got a long way to get home.
Oh, yeah.
To Mississippi. But thanks for stopping by.
Yep,
on
enjoyed it.
Way back.
So the answer is Toyota.
Hope you've enjoyed this one. Robert and I have had a lot of fun just sitting here talking about this. We love to rag on the vehicles and pick on the differences between them, but at the end of the day, we love them all.
And I will say this: my 4Runner's got 130,000 miles on it. The Jeep only has 30. How many do you have on your Gladiator?
Just turned 50.
50. So let's talk in another 100,000 miles.
Yep.
And see who's still standing.
Yep, that's a good point. That's a very good point. But give the video a like if you would. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. Check out the Patreon link in the description below. If you like what we're doing and you want to support the channel, get access to special content, special events, and all of our GPS data, go check that out. And for Ozark Overland Adventures merchandise, which none of us were wearing, go to shopoverlandapparel.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.